Okay, so I've got the instructions pulled up on another window. I've got just a browser open here and my coding environment, and I've got my directory open. I just created one called Bispo Final. I don't think I requested a particular naming on this, as I recall, but you were very good. You've gotten to know what I like. And by the way, everyone's test passed validation. I was very, very happy about that. There were a couple of warnings here and there, and I made a comment about those where I thought they were important, but I don't think anyone got points taken off for lack of W3C validation. So that made me happy. I feel like I've imparted something to you over the past 5 weeks. So, okay, I'm going to make myself a new document here, and as you guys know, if you've got one document or a home page, it should be called index.html. And I'm going to go ahead and make, well, no, I'll do things in order here. Okay, so I'm just looking at the instructions. The first thing, build an HTML document. The title of the document should contain the text, your last name, final exam. So basic document first here. So doc type. I always want to type document type, but it's not. It's doc type, HTML. And then your root element, HTML. Lang equals EN, which you should put on there for performance and accessibility. The root element has two children, head and body. So go ahead and do those first. And then the head element always has to have at least two elements in it. One of them is the char set meta. So meta character set equals UTF-8 -8. And it's got to have a title, right? If you don't have a title in there, then it doesn't pass validation. And I even gave you a hint about that. I said I want the title to be, whatever. So title here, and then Bispo's final exam. And if you were really doing things properly, then you take that straight apostrophe and turn it into a right single quote, Matt. That's the one you're looking for, right single quote.
I did end up getting that in there.
Cool. Awesome. Now, if you wanted to, I didn't take points off for doing this, but some of you did do it, which I was happy to see. Generally speaking, when you have a web page, whatever's in your title, or at least part of it, is mirrored down into, the most important heading. And so maybe I'll create a header and copy that and put it into an H1 down here. Yeah, I'm going to have to pull this over a bit so we can see, unfortunately. Let's try that. Okay. And then maybe you also thought about, since I've got a header, maybe I should have a main element as well. Again, I didn't take off points for not doing any of this stuff because I didn't actually ask for it. So let's go ahead and take this live here to see what we've got so far. And I'm actually going to put this into this Chrome that I've got in this window group here. There we go. So there we go. That's it so far. There's the title up there. There's the H1. You can see the nice apostrophe there. We're looking good. So that's the first part, building the document. The next part is the form. So you're supposed to build a form element in here. Now there's a few attributes that normally go onto a form. You have a method, you have an action. Usually you put an ID just to give it a name so you can grab hold of it and so on. You could put method equals post if you wanted to. I didn't take any points off for not doing that. I didn't take any points off for not putting an ID either. It just makes it a lot easier to select for it, either with the JavaScript or the CSS. So let's see, exam answers, something like that. There's the form. And then it says the form should contain a field set and a submit button. See how, like if you read the instructions carefully, then it pretty much gave you all the answers here. There's supposed to be a field set. And then in addition to a field set, there should be a button, which is a submit button. And you can put whatever you wanted to into there. Okay, cool. The field set now should contain, Now Bispo is telling us exactly what should go into the field set. It should have a legend with the text exam. Here's what we're looking like so far. There's the field set with the legend, and there's the button there. And then after the legend, there should be 2 text fields for first and last name and an email field. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and get that. And as you know, these are all going to go inside labels. Now, one person in the class did things the other way, which we hadn't even gone over. But I think I mentioned it in the demo. You can have a label that is separated in the code from the input. So the input is not actually nested inside the label. If you do that, then the label needs to have a for attribute and the input needs to have an ID attribute, and the values of those need to match. So for instance, if this were for the first name, which it will be, you would have label for equals first name, and then the input would have to have ID equals first name, and that's how they would match up. But I think the simpler way to do it is just go ahead and put the input directly inside of here. So this is going to be first name, and then an input, type equals text, and it needs a name, right? Name equals first name. There we go. There's that one. And let's see. I don't want to see if I can just get this out of the way. I'm going to bring that back up again. But yeah, okay. So we can see a little bit more of it now. So there's that guy, first name, and then the input inside of there. We'll do another one just like it, except it's going to be for last name. Start off with the label. Last name, input, type equals text, name equals last name. There we go. There's that guy. And then one more. And this is going to be for the email address. Let's see, input type equals email this time. Name equals email address. Like so. Okay, so that gets the labels and the inputs in there. So I didn't specifically ask for labels, but at some point, and when talking about the CSS, I think I talked about the labels. So if you forgot to put it in here, then that would be a clue that, oh yeah, you're supposed to put a label. Let's see, inputs should all have a requirement that they must be filled out before the form is submitted. So for that, you just go ahead and tack on a required attribute without a value. Technically, the more verbose of this looks like this. It's going to drive you guys crazy. Required equals required instead of like required equals true or something like that. So luckily we can just do that instead because that's a lot neater. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so extra credit. Prepare the document for mobile viewing. So let's take a look at this real quick. I'm going to save this guy here. And here are my ugly forms. And let me go over here and bring up the console. I know this is going to be kind of squished over here. Sorry about that. I really need to get a wider screen laptop for this sort of thing. But if I click on this guy, the device toolbar, then it'll show us what this will look like in, one or more devices. So if I, for instance, iPhone 12 Pro, and you see what it does is it takes the entire page and like squeezes it down. So you would have to do the pinch thing and zoom in order to be able to see anything. It's a real mess. Unless you remember the other meta to put in here, which is this guy, meta name equals viewport. And this falls into the configuration that most metas do, which is a name attribute and a content attribute. Content equals, and this is the weird one here, width equals device width, comma. It's weird. I say it's weird because putting the equals inside the quotes here, I really wish they hadn't gone that way. But width equals device width, and then initial scale equals 1, like so. And now if I save that and go over here, now it's looking better. I know it's still squeezed, but at least this is showing, like, at least you can see it, right? You couldn't even see it before. It was squeezing so much. So if you'd gotten either one of these in, either width equals device width or initial scale equals 1, then I would have given the credit for that. However, it had to work. So there were actually several that had small little typos in here, things like that and so on, that prevented this from actually working. Okay, so that was the extra credit. Moving on to the CSS here. knowing that we're going to do CSS, I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder. I can't remember what we call it, CSS or styles or what have you, but it doesn't really matter what you call it as long as it makes sense. And I'm going to put in there a main.css. And there we go. And I like to comment it at the top. And right off the bat, I'm going to link this in because I have a tendency to forget to do that. And then I start writing CSS, and then I refresh over here, and I'm wondering why it's not working. So right off the bat here, I'm going to go into, it's going to be at the end of the title. If I can get the cursor, thank you. Let's try that again. There we go. So link rel equals style sheet. I think you guys all got this part. href equals. Usually it gives me a drop down when I do it. There we go. CSS slash and then main.css.
I think it was confused by the extra set of quotes.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah, somehow my typing screwed it up. Okay, there we go. Now we can start to do some of this stuff. Okay, so let's see here. I'm trying to pull this a little bit out of the way there. Okay. Okay, so CSS instructions, the form, style the field set so the label text appears above each field. So this is going to be a label selector. We were talking about that before. Yeah, the main reasons to do label are for accessibility and usability, but they also make a handy hook for your CSS. So label, and we will do a display flex. That by itself will put these guys next to each other, but we don't want that, right? The instructions say to put the label text above each field. Now this was the part that I screwed up, but everybody I think understood what I meant once I got things fixed. So display flex, and then the way that you get these to appear vertically instead of horizontally is to do a flex direction column, like so. And then these guys are showing up above one each other. I was hoping that this would work in here, but can't really see it very well. There we go. And then it just says, okay, so make it pretty. So you guys can do whatever you wanted to with this. I didn't make a big fuss about how pretty you made it. I was just giving you the opportunity to kind of flex your chops a little bit. If you wanted to, like if it were me, the first thing that I would do would be to go to Google Fonts and look for, it really didn't matter which one, like almost any of these would be better than Times, but Open Sans is the one that I used. And let's see. This is just, this tiny window stuff is killing me, so I think that I'm going to actually have to flip back and forth between these. There we go. Okay, so what we did in demo before is you download the regular and the bold if you want the bold as well. If you were working with italicized text, then you would want to download one of these italic ones as well. Let's see, where's the bold? Bold 700, there we go. And then go up here. I like to do the at import, which is the way I showed you to do it. And then you can just grab this text and copy it and paste it right into your CSS over here. See, now that I'm doing things this way, I can pull this out a little bit as well, if it lets me. There we go. So remember, at imports and at font face should go all the way up at the top, and then you can do something like body, font face. Let's see, what did I do? Open sans? Yeah, open sans. If it's 2 or more words, then it should go into quotes. I can close this. And then, oh, font face. I always do that because it's this technique is called at font face, but the actual property is font family. There we go. So again, I did not take off any points for not doing that. That was part of the midterm exam. So it was not a requirement for the final exam here. And then what else would I do? I mean, it's mainly a spacing thing. And I think the main things you could do would be put some padding inside the field set and then put some margins around the inputs. So if I do field set and give it like a padding 1M, I think is what we did before. Yeah, it's fine to start with. And then input. Margin, I'll do a top and bottom of 0.5M and left and right of 0. So just anything like that. I think before we talked about putting a little bit more space below than above the inputs, but if you got this far, then you're doing good. Maybe put a little margin top on the button there. Margin top, 1M, something like this. This is all like the stuff that we did in Friday of last week and then Tuesday of this week as well. So no surprises there. You could do it further. I would probably actually put some padding on the button and the input. And you could do a compound selector for that if you wanted to. You could do something like input, comma, button. And then I'm going to give it a padding of just like 0.5M or something like that. And you see it just makes it a little bit easy, makes it breathe a little bit, right? It doesn't feel quite so cramped anymore. But that's, like I said, totally up to you. Okay, so enough said. So we've got that part of it. The next part is the responsive design. Set a media query breakpoint at 600 pixels. So here's what that looks like. At media, screen, and then you put a condition here in parentheses. So 600 pixels, you would want to do a min width 600px, like so, and then whatever rules we put in here will only take effect at 600 pixels or wider. So what does it tell you to do in here? At this width, the label text should appear to the left of the fields instead of above them. So right now the text is above them. Let's go ahead and move that to the side by doing a label. This had a display flex on it. Oops, not square brackets. Display flex and flex direction column. So all we have to do is take this and change the flex direction to row. And there we go. They're next to each other now instead. So they look pretty ugly. Let's fix it. So I will do, let's see, what else am I going to do? I'm going to do the input. And remember to make something flexy or stretchy. You can do a shorthand of flex 1 like that, and then it'll stretch across. To get a little bit of space between those, you could start playing around with margins, but as I was recalling, about a week ago, there is the gap property. So if you did something like that, oh, wrong thing. I got to put that in a label. Sorry, not the input. There we go. That's handy, right? Put a little space in there. And then getting these guys down there, like having the text here at the top of the fields, I think that looks really ugly. So once again, you could either play around with margins, or I gave you a link actually in the text, the test itself, to that Flexbox page on CSS tricks. And you could use a property that we never used in demo, I don't think. But if you wanted to, you could play around with it, and it's align items. You put it on the parent element, and if you did something like align items baseline, and you can see how nice and handy that is. It just lines things up the way they ought to be. So the baseline in here matches up with the baseline out here. So that's pretty enough for me. That works. All right, so the next part and the last part is the jQuery. Okay, so once again, I know that I'm going to need a JavaScript page, so I'll go back out here, make another subfolder, call it JS, and inside there make a new document. You can call it anything you wanted to. Main.js would do just fine. And now we're going to call in two different scripts. So one of them is going to be the jQuery script itself, the library, and then the second one is going to be the script that we're going to be writing. So first of all, if I just do a search for jQuery CDN, And you could do either here on jQuery.com, or the one that I like to use is CDN.js, just because it's kind of a one-stop shop. They've got almost everything here that you might want to use. Just grab one of these guys, copy the URL. Either one of the top two would work. And then go into your HTML and put it where you're calling in a JavaScript library. You want to put it up at the bottom of the head element. A couple of people started putting it inside the header element, which is totally understandable. It's really confusing that there's a head and a header and then headings. But it goes up inside the head element here. It doesn't break anything if you put it down here. It's just kind of an odd spot for it. So let's see, script source equals, and then paste that in there. And close that, so you're now calling in jQuery. And then down at the bottom of the page, before the body element closes, put another script element with a source equals. So it's once again not giving me that handy little drop down. I don't know why, but it's in JS. There we go. /main.js. Something with those quotes. I don't know what happens. Okay, so anyway, there we go. And so whenever we start working with JavaScript, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and bring up the console just so you can see what's happening here. I am going to take off that the device toolbar here so that we can actually type into those fields. There we go. Okay, so let's see what the instructions say. And by the way, this was part of the points here, is just calling in the CDN, or calling in, the CDN of jQuery. Okay, attach a click event to the submit button of the form that prevents the submission of the form. So right now, if I put stuff in here, let's see. What happens is that it refreshes the entire page, and it's actually trying to, since this method equals post, it's trying to look for something to process the form, and I'm not giving it to it. So we could do that. And so let's go ahead and stop that from happening. So main.js. Now, I'm not sure if anybody did this or not, but what you commonly see is this kind of initializer function that basically it's like document ready. Someone did do document.ready, but it's a way of just saying, okay, the script isn't going to run until all of your document is loaded. Of course, we're putting this at the bottom of the document anyway, so it probably doesn't matter a whole lot. But anyway, that's something that you usually see like this. And here's what the click event handler looks like. So I'm going to do, let's see, what did it say? Let me read this again. Attach a click event to the submit button of the form that prevents the submission of the form. So there were actually two different ways that you could do this, and I worded it that way so that you would know. The way that we did it in demo was we had created a submit event and attached it to the form. The instructions talk about doing a click event on the button. So you could do it either way. So if you follow the instructions to the letter, you could go like this, button, and then .click, and then continue with the functionality that you're going to have in there. Or you could do it the same way that we did it in demo. And what's my form name? Exam answers. And do a .submit. Either way, it comes out to being exactly the same thing. So either way would have been perfectly fine there. .submit function. And this is what the code block looks like. I know that this is an event, which means that if I want to do something with the event, I have to pass in a variable here, which is commonly called E or event or EVT or EV or something like that. And the first thing you want to do is prevent the submission of that form. So it's E, there's that variable that we're passing in, with a prevent default method attached to it. So now, if I do something like this, what you're looking for is that when you click this or hit enter or whatever, it does not refresh the page. You don't get an error 404, and these forms don't empty out. That's what you're looking for. By the way, there's something that I realized I should have shown you guys before at some point this semester, but I did not. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make it so that when the page gets refreshed, that this first field is focused, which means that the cursor is already placed in there, so you don't have to click to get it in there. It's something that you should really do for usability and arguably accessibility as well. So I'm just going to grab that first input, and the way that I'm going to do it, remember how you do it in CSS, I can grab the first label, first of type, and then grab the input that's inside of that with a compound selected. So I'm going to do label first of type. I know I showed you guys that at some point in week 3, something like that, and then space input. So grabbing the input that's inside the first label and then just doing a dot focus. Now this may not immediately work because of all the stuff that we're doing in the console, but yeah, okay, so this time it did work. I just tabbed over to the browser and take a look at that. I did not have to click in there. It's already focused. That's really, really handy. Users like that. So here's just something you can take with you at the end of the course here. Okay, so we prevented the default functionality of the form, either with submit or with click on the button. Again, using jQuery, loop through the input elements and set each name to value in local storage.setItem. I even gave you the name of local storage and the method to attach to it. So here we go. We're going to loop through the inputs like so, and using the .each function, and the first thing that I would want to do personally before trying this to do the local storage, I would want to just spit these out to the console to make things sure it was working. So it would do console.log and then this .name and this .value. So what it's doing is it's grabbing the name attribute of each of these and then the value that's been typed into the field. So I'm going to test this out here. I'm going to type in some stuff. Submit your answers, and here we go. They show up in the console. So things are working. First name Lou, last name Bispo, email address, whatever it was I typed in. So now you could either comment this out or delete it or just leave it in there. There's nothing wrong with having some stray console logs sitting around because the users never know about it, right? They have no idea the console even exists. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do local storage. And before I do this, let me make sure that local storage is cleared. So I do local storage.clear, so we won't get any stray values in there. Set item, and then for each of those, I'm going to set this .name to this .value, like so. So over here, I'll put in those same values again. Submit your answers. There you go. And that's just the console spitting it out. But to test this, and it tells you how to do this in the test, go to local storage, just type it in, and you should see these values. There's last name Bispo, first name Lou, email address, and there we go. Notice the order is different here. Like I was saying, objects in JavaScript, they're not ordered, so they can pop down in any order. And that's it. That was it to get the rest of this stuff done. And again, this part is optional. And if you couldn't figure out how to do this, then you can get partial credit just by doing the console.log and leaving it at that. Okay, so that's it. I just wanted to go over that stuff with you guys tonight. Any questions that you guys have about any of this, or about HTML or CSS or JavaScript, or any parts of the test that you found like unreasonably difficult or unreasonably easy? Anything like that? Any feedback or questions?
The videos really helped.
Awesome. Good to hear. Speaking of which, I will go ahead and stop the recording here. This is the last recording I'll post